The cerebrum is the largest part of your brain. It's the center for your intelligence, your sensory motor skills, your judgment, your thought, your memory, and perception of your senses such as vision, smell, taste, and balance. It's divided into two hemispheres, and it's separated by this cleft, which is called the longitudinal fissure. Your left hemisphere is associated with logic and skills such as math and science, and your right hemisphere is associated with imagination, artistic and musical skills, and insight. The main source of communication between the two hemispheres is the corpus callosum, which is this bridge of neurons. And something unique about the two hemispheres is that each hemisphere controls the opposite side of the body. So, for example, your right hemisphere controls your left side of the body and vice versa. The cerebrum has both sensory and motor areas. The central sulcus serves as an anatomical landmark to divide the motor areas of the frontal lobe and the sensory areas of the parietal, occipital, temporal, and insula. Each cerebral hemisphere is divided into 5 distinct lobes. Your frontal lobe is involved with thinking, planning, problem solving, emotions, and decision making. The parietal lobe is involved with perception, object classification, spelling, and knowledge of numbers. Your temporal lobe is involved with hearing, smell, memory, understanding language, facial recognition, vision, and speech. Your occipital lobe is involved with vision, visual processing, and color identification. And the insula is involved with memory and the interpretation of taste.
The diencephalon, also known as the in-between brain, and it is sandwiched between the inferior regions of the cerebral hemispheres, which is all this area, and it contains the epithalamus, thalamus, and hypothalamus. The epithalamus, which is this area right here. It houses the pineal gland, which is an endocrine gland that secretes melatonin, which helps the body's day and night cycles get regulated, and that's known as the circadian rhythm. The thalamus, which is this area all right here. And it's packed masses of gray matter that are on either side of the third ventricle. Each part of the thalamus is a gray matter mass composed of about 12 thalamic nuclei, organized into groups of axons and sensory nerve signals. It's a relay point for incoming sensory information that is processed and projected to the appropriate lobe of the cerebral cortex. It acts as an information filter. The third section of the diencephalon is the hypothalamus, which is this area all right here. It has a thin stalk-like infibulum that relays information and attaches it to the pituitary glands to carry it out. It's a master control of the autonomic nervous system. It's a master controller of the endocrine system also, but it doesn't control everything the endocrine system controls. It helps regulate body temperature. It acts as the body's internal thermometer, making sure everything stays the area it should be. It helps control emotional behavior. It monitors feelings of hunger and thirst to maintain homeostasis. And it regulates the body's day-night patterns and directs the pineal gland to secrete melatonin at certain times of the day. It's probably your most major brain function for homeostasis because it kind of controls everything that's happening in your body.
The cerebellum receives information from the sensory systems, the spinal cord, and other parts of the brain, and then regulates motor movements. It coordinates voluntary movements such as posture, balance, coordination, and speech, resulting in smooth and balanced muscular activity. It's also important for learning motor behaviors. It modulates commands to motor neurons to compensate for shifts in body position or changes in load upon muscles. For the body to make any given gesture, the sequence and duration of each of the basic movements of each body segment involved must be controlled in a very precise manner. Although the cerebellum is most understood in terms of its contribution to motor control, it's also involved in certain cognitive functions such as language. The cerebellum, nicknamed the little brain, is located behind the top part of the brainstem where the spinal cord meets the brain. And it's also made of two halves called hemispheres, much like the cerebrum. It consists of the cerebellar cortex and deep cerebellar nuclei with white medulla in between. It consists of two parts in each half, the anterior lobe and the posterior lobe, and it's separated by the primary fissure. The arbor vitae, or tree of life, can be seen in a sagittal model. It consists of white matter and is surrounded by gray matter. The folds on the cerebellum are called folia, and the vermis, or worm, receives the sensory input reporting the torso and balance.
The structure that I'm covering is the brainstem. The brainstem is the region of the brain that connects the cerebrum with the spinal cord. It consists of the midbrain, the medulla oblongata, and the pons. The brainstem is located at the junction of the cerebrum and the spinal cord and is anterior to the cerebellum. The brainstem has many functions such as alertness, arousal, breathing, blood pressure, digestion, and heart rate. It is also responsible for the other autonomic functions like relaying information between the peripheral nerves and the spinal cord to the upper parts of the brain. Motor and sensory neurons travel through the brain stem, allowing for the relay of signals between the brain and the spinal cord. The brain stem is important because it coordinates motor control signals sent from the brain to the body. The brain stem also controls life-supporting autonomic functions of the peripheral nervous system.